Hello again, everybody. So good evening. My name is Melvin. I'm a wealth expert here at Syfe. So today's webinar will be hosted by Sebastian, but we have a very interesting guest here with us tonight. So she's actually Annabelle, Dr. Annabelle, to be precise. So she's a clinical psychologist registered here in Singapore and Australia, but she's currently practicing here in Singapore. So she works with people with complex trauma, personality disorders, anxiety and mood issues, and also relationship difficulties. So Annabelle strongly believes that needs of every individual are unique and different. And if you guys are interested to have like a deeper conversation with her, right, you guys can check out her clinics. I believe it's at Novena. Right. So over to you, Annabelle.
Thanks, Melvin. Hi, everyone. I'm Annabelle. Thanks for spending the evening with me. Melvin, I can't share my screen because you're still sharing yours. Yeah, let me just, okay, let me see. Okay, is my screen up? Can you guys see?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, hi everyone, I'm Annabelle. I'm a clinical psychologist and I'm a mother of two. Christmas is here and New Year is here, and I love to spend money. And I think that with the festive season coming, there's a lot of impulsive spending, impulsive buying, and I'm really privileged and honored for Syfe to invite me to share some strategies and tips to kind of make our financial resolutions come true. So I hope you'll find the next hour worthwhile. So what I'll share today, they will be divided into three sections. One will be to share a bit of that concept of values versus goals. The second one will be the language that we use as we communicate with our friends and family, and even the way that we think about things. And just 5 actionable tips that I think could be helpful for all of us. Okay, so I suppose even like in recent times, we've got all the big sale happening, right? Like the big sales of 11/11, 10/10, 12/12, Black Friday. Festive season basically just means lots of shopping, lots of discounts. There's reasons to gift our friends and family. That's about the time that you get your bonus, so you treat yourself for a job that is well done for the year. And it's also a time that we may kind of consolidate, I don't know, maybe your years of expenditure and also your savings, and decide what you want to do with the money, whether you save it, you spend it, or you invest in it. So there's a lot of decisions that we need to make, and more often than not, whether it is in my own private life with my friends or actually in the clinic, people usually tell me that they end up spending more than they had planned to, and they definitely end up saving less than they want to, and they end up with a lot of buyer's remorse, and sometimes in extreme cases, they may end up in credit card debt, and that results in a lot of relationship stresses. If you have different values with your partner specifically. So if you believe in, example, being generous with your friends and family, and you will kind of spend all your bonus on them, but if your partner's not aligned with you on that values, I think sometimes that can create a strain on the relationship. So what are then values and goals? So when we think about goals, right? If I think about a more academic school setting, all of us have been through school, and we live in an environment and culture where we have been told that you need to score a certain mark in class, and you need to make sure you get through to the next stage and the next level, and you need to get to Express or IB. And there are a lot of goals that probably the people around us set for us, or even we set for ourselves. The thing about goals is that it's usually never ending, and it can get really, I don't know, frustrating and even exhausting. So I think about the time where I probably scored an A. I worked so hard. I scored an A for my science paper. And then there's like a short moment of happiness. And then I know that very quickly I have another exam to prepare for, and then that happiness dissipates. And then I just need to start working on the next goal. So the happiness that I derive from setting goals can be quite transient and quite short term. But when we think about values, on the other hand, it is actually about kind of the direction that guides us in life. What are personal values that are important to us? Personal goals, personal life philosophies that make us who we are. So, for example, if I believe that it is important to try my best, in the example of the academic setting, right, then it doesn't really matter so much what I score at the end of the day, even though my goal could still be I want to do well and I want to try to get an A, but the values will guide the process of how I get there. So if I had tried my best and whatever the result comes, if I'm value driven, I would actually be quite comfortable and satisfied and content with the fact that I tried my best. So how do we then kind of apply these goals and how do we then apply these goals and these values in our shopping or investing or saving? I think we need to start to think about what are perimeters, so goals, general kind of goals and guidelines that we want. How much do we want to be saving in terms of a percentage of our paycheck, and what do we really want to achieve each year? So one of the goals that I have actually come up with for the year 2021, together with my husband as a challenge, and unfortunately I'm losing so miserably in this challenge, is to collect $5 notes. So we had an agreement that, our goal is to try to collect as many $5 notes as we can in the year. And halfway through the year, he came to me and he had this whole stash of $5 notes, and I have none. It's December and I still have none. And I said, oh, but I pay now everything and I transfer everything now. And so I didn't meet my goal of, kind of saving that $5 notes. But the values of trying is there and not giving up is there. So even from the time that we did like a check in the middle of the year, I kind of continued with my value of persevering and trying to pull together $5 notes. We'll check in again at the end of the year and see how many I end up with. Intentional language. When we talk about intentional language, it's the idea where words have weight. So oftentimes when we talk about things, we don't actually pay attention to the words that you use. And when you don't pay attention to the words you use, you don't actually realize the impact that it has on us. So the way that we think about things affect the way that we feel and react towards it. So example would be if I think that, oh no, I'm a terrible person for, if maybe I think of myself as a miserly person, like, oh no, I'm just very careful with my money and, I'm just, I cannot spend on anybody, because money is difficult to come by. And then that will cause some anxiety when you spend. And naturally, the reaction to that would be you will stop spending and you'll be more focused on saving and you'll be very careful with every dollar that goes out. So words have weight, even in a family setting, if you think about communicating with your partners or with your children, when we make a flippant comment about, an example that can come to my mind would be if I think that my child is intentionally doing something to piss me off, then I would likely feel quite upset about it and pretty defensive about it, angry about it, and I'm likely to react in a more unfriendly way and a less open and curious way. So when it comes to the way we handle our spending, especially during the festive season, I think it'll be helpful for us to be more mindful and more intentional of the language that we use. So 5 actionable tips, I've divided them into how to take on a values-driven approach, how we can think about managing impulse, especially with all the the sales out there that actually are generated with psychology principles underneath it? How do we make deliberate decisions? How do we challenge some thoughts that we have? And how do we journey towards positive change? Okay, so I talked a little bit about values, but what are our values? Do you know what your values are? Do you know what your values are and whether you are currently aligned with them in terms of the decisions that you make in your life? Or do you feel like you're very far from your values? A lot of times when I talk to my patients in the clinic, they often tell me that they're not really aware of what their values are, because just primarily in our culture and our society, we're very focused on the goals. We're very focused on, graduating from a good uni, getting a good job, marrying a beautiful wife, a good husband, buying the next house, buying the next car. And it's a lot of focus on traditionally what we call the 5 C's, the condo, the cash, the credit card, and all that. And there's just a lot of like relentless chasing in the rat race. But what is actually important to us? What makes us who we are? And what kind of person do we want to be? And in the same vein, how do we align some of our spending habits to these values? Have we intentionally thought about some guiding values in the way that we spend or we save or even when we invest? So just with the values, I thought maybe it would be a helpful exercise for us to think about. So get, everyone in the audience, we've got about 50 of us here. I'd like to invite you to have a think about, imagine that it is your 60th birthday. And everybody whom you have invited to this birthday party are your closest friends, your family members, people who mean a lot to you. And someone has come up to give you a toast to celebrate you for you. What do you hope that they will say about you? Not what you think they might say, but what you hope that they might say about you. Anyone wants to share in the chat box? Any thoughts about 60th birthday, someone celebrates you and they're saying, example, I appreciate that Annabelle has been XYZ. What comes to mind?
Sorry. Maybe I can share mine. Or like a few from plans are coming. So Wing Tan said, honest. Priscilla said, kind, a good friend.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks for participating. And that's really important because I think when we think about how we spend money, I think we can also think about whether we're doing that in accordance to your values, right? Are you honest with yourself? With what you're doing with your money? Are you buying something for the sake of buying something? Or are you really buying it because it has meaning and you want to buy it? Is it in line with the value of kindness? Are you buying it because it will make someone happy? And it will brighten someone's day? Or are you just buying it for the sake of buying it? So, in that vein, you can start to think about how your values can align with the way that you spend or invest your money. Okay, that's the question. Should I?
Yes. Yeah. So I think this question relates really well to the point. So what would you say that the self-image of ourselves has any impact on our financial decisions? If so, what can we do to make better decisions?
For sure. I think that's a really relevant question. Definitely, a lot of times, the way that we spend money is actually related to our self-image and also the values that is important to us. So if you think about your self-image being, and a lot of times that also coincides with your self-esteem, right? And how you think about yourself and what's important to you. if you are surrounded by a group of people who are very opulent in the way that they spend money or show their fortune, and you constantly feel like I'm not really catching up or I'm falling behind, and it affects the way you think about yourself, then the likely decision of spending more, buying a bigger car, upgrading your home will likelihood be there. And because that's driven by an emotional decision, you're likely to end up making impulsive decisions. So what I would recommend is for you to take a step back and for you to kind of think about what are some values that are important to you. Coincidentally, I was actually having a conversation with one of my patients today about this. She is from India. She was born in India, and in her family environment, they come from, she doesn't really come from a very well-to-do family, but she married into a very wealthy family, and they have, they are in constant contact with people who are extremely wealthy, and are also very focused on the value of money more than they are actually focused on who you are as a person, whether you're independent, whether you try your best, whether you are intelligent, whether you are kind or you're honest. So there's a lot of focus on that. But my client, even though she was, she was born in the environment and she grew up in the environment, she actually struggles with it because she actually believes that, it's important to be independent. It's important to work hard for your own money. It's more important to be kind than to measure someone's, kind of value by how much money they have. Despite that, she finds it really difficult, when she's making financial decisions as to the car that she's going to drive and the house that she's going to buy and the kind of clothes that she's going to don on herself. She finds that really challenging when she needs to make decisions like that, because there is that image that she needs to preserve. But she also acknowledges that the chase of, for that makes her really unhappy. There is a concept that I will share in a few slides later, which is the concept of wise mind mode. Let me just pull that out. We'll move a few slides forward and just pull that out because it's relevant to this. So with wise mind mode is really a marriage of logical and emotional mind. So logical mind is really where you take a problem-solving approach. You think about pros and cons of investing, of saving, of spending, short-term, long-term consequences. For me, a question that I often ask myself when I'm thinking logically is this environmentally friendly? Do I really need an extra piece of clothing, or can I actually just reuse what I have? Or an emotional decision on the other end is usually very impulsive. I see, I like it, I really must have it. My friends have it, so I must have it. So that's a very emotional decision. And sometimes that doesn't just extend to clothes, right? Or like daily commodities. That can extend to the cars that you end up driving and the kind of district that you end up living in. So making wise mind considered decisions means that you marry both of them and you consider the pros and cons, the consequences of logic, as well as taking into consideration how you feel about the certain matter. And the wise mind also takes into consideration your values. I would encourage us to use this approach when we make any decisions, not only about spending decisions and, about self-image, but any decisions in our life. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to my slides. Okay. Earlier, I shared a little bit about impulsive shopping, right? Impulsive decisions. It often leads to buyer's remorse, and I'm sure that you, as well as myself, is guilty of that. I think my most guilty recent desire and purchase from Taobao is something that I know I'll not use, but it's just that kind of machine that you put yourself in, and then it's like a semi what you call it, like it just helps, like it's a fixed steam room kind of thing. My husband said, you're only going to use that 2 times, and it's going to be a white elephant. And I have to admit, I think that was really an emotional decision because there was a sale, right? There was a big sale. It was the 11/11 and they slashed prices. But the thing is, these shops, they intentionally are designed with psychology principles so that we can lower our resistance. And it actually just encourages us to spend because it just taps into that emotional part of our brain. So if you think about like last minute deals, if you think about limited editions, if you think about using senses, so some examples would be, I don't know whether you walk past Famous Amos cookies and you're like, I really need to have that cookie. Like, I really need to have it. You're not hungry. You don't particularly need to snack, but the smell of it entices you to buy it. Same with roti boy, right? Like that bread thing. So actually senses, including shops that sells perfumes and all that, they actually connect with our senses to lower the resistance and encourage us to buy. Oftentimes, if shops tell you that I have an abundance of this product, people tend to not really engage in the buying. But if we say we only have like 10 left, first come, first serve. And the truth is they may not actually only have 10, but they are just telling you that, we would just naturally just more impulsively say, I need to have that. And that's really stemming from the concept of FOMO, fear of missing out. So being aware of how like these psychology principles actually encourage impulsive buying, I think also helps us to make a little bit more congruent decisions, moving forward as to if you really, really need that product. Shopping mindfully. So the concept of mindfulness is that you pay attention in a certain way, in a special way, and you notice X. So X being whatever that you're noticing, whether it is your breath. So in a traditional clinical setting, we usually start with learning how to breathe mindfully. And breathing mindfully really means sitting down, noticing your breath, noticing how the air is coming in and out of your nose and how your tummy and chest is bobbing up and down as you breathe. And there's just no control in trying to manipulate it to make it faster or slower. So the concept of mindfulness is really just staying present, being curious, and being aware. In the same vein, when it comes to shopping, I think when we are mindlessly shopping, as with mindlessly eating or mindlessly drinking, we do end up going to the other end of the spectrum, that we overdo it and we just end up buying more, drinking more, and doing things that are probably not so in line with our values, or not really doing things that are more in a healthy range of behaviors and decisions. So maybe we can just stop, when we go shopping, perhaps we can just be more mindful, even with every step that we are taking to each shop. Be more mindful of the experience, be more mindful and intentional about what you're pulling out, be more mindful about how you're feeling and how you are thinking. Generally, as a rule of thumb, if you feel like I really must get it now and I cannot not have it now, anything from clothes to cookies to a car, is most likely an emotional, impulsive decision. And perhaps we can stop ourselves in our track and just kind of breathe into that moment and just say, hang on, what's happening? Why do I really need to have this? And is there any way that I can just give myself a braking system just to stop and assess the situation, make a wise mind decision before I continue? Right? So that comes to the exercise, the acronym that I will use called STOP, S-T-O-P. S just really means stop. So, if you're about to take your credit card and swipe, or like now you don't even need credit card, okay? Now I don't even bring my credit card out. Like I just use my phone and tap, right? Before you take it out and you want to swipe or tap, stop and just take a breath to anchor yourself. Just breathe and just observe and notice what is happening. How are you feeling? Just check in. How are you feeling? Why are you buying this? Do you really need it? and observe your surroundings, observe whether you're buying it because your friend is buying it, or buying it because the shop owner is telling you that there's only one piece left, so you're buying it because of that. Have you actually, been more mindful of your experience? And then P, proceed effectively. Effectively is where the cognitive part of your brain kicks in, right? Where you start to think about pros and cons, you start to think about consequences, you start to think about why you buy, you start to think about the wise mind decision, and then you can make a decision to say, okay, am I going to tap or am I going to say, thanks, maybe not today. I saw a few questions pop up.
Some pretty interesting one.
Do we answer them now or at the end of the session?
I think we can answer perhaps the first one at least.
Okay. How do we break out of a scarcity mindset, and what's the right balance between spending and saving aligned with the values that you want to live by? I think that the first step to breaking out of any automatic habits is always awareness. If we are not aware, and we don't, then second thing, have the motivation to do something about it, we will not be very successful in the change cycle. So I think the first step I would encourage is to kind of be aware that you might be more susceptible to the scarcity mindset. And I really like that you bring this up, because I happen to be one of those people who is like, oh my God, just 2 left. Okay, I want it, give me both of them. So I think just being aware that, that is your pitfall, and that's something that you might be more susceptible of. Then the second thing is, when I'm more aware of it, I want to make an intentional effort to do something about it. The reality is, change is not going to just happen like that, not immediately after this sharing session, but more often than not, it's really an accumulation of experiences. So what it looks like is, okay, I'm aware that I'm more susceptible to this. The next time I'm in this situation, I want to try to catch myself in the way that I'm making the decisions to make this purchase, right? But the reality is, you are likely to still persist with this mindset, and the reality is you are still going to just purchase it. But that is really okay. Be kind and compassionate. The important thing after that is to reflect upon that. How did that make you feel? How did that make you feel? And is that something that is bringing up like buyer's remorse? Is that something that you want to work on? Each time you go through the reflection process, you are actually more successful in the change process. So clinically, I term it as what I call the trodden pathway. So I don't know whether you've, you know what I'm saying, but with the trodden pathway, it's those pathways, like usually at a traffic junction, then people don't really want to walk the 90 degrees angle, then they walk a shortcut across the grass patch. And then everything is a grass patch, but there is a trodden pathway where it's just barren soil, you know what I'm saying? And change happens like that, right? You would tell yourself, I don't want to walk on the barren soil. I want to walk on the concrete floor. But because the barren soil is there, each time you get to that junction, you are likely to automatically go onto it because it's just there. It's automatic, right? You don't think about it mindfully. But each time you walk past it and you tell yourself, oh, actually the next time I don't want, I want to build a new habit. And then the next time and the next time, then you are more likely to be early in the trodden pathway, that there will come a day that you will not embark on that trodden pathway. And over time, the grass will grow back and it will no longer be a pathway that you will take. So this mindset is the same when it comes to like resisting impulsive decisions, scarcity mindset, and it's also the same in all the other habits in our life. In terms of like sorry,
so the trodden path is something like the very bad habit, right? That people walk on when they buy, like they should be using the cemented path instead.
Yeah, so I won't say so much that it's a bad habit, but more that it's an automatic habit, right? It's just so automatic that we don't think about it because all the lights in our brain are just lighted up, just also like the airplane route, right? That the lights are lighted up, the trodden pathway is there. There is just, we will not think about taking another pathway. So it's just a very automatic route. But if there is a habit that we want to change, then being aware about it, being aware of it, and then reflecting upon it, and making mindful decisions each step of the way can help us make a change. Yeah.
Maybe one more. So I think this relates back to your current slide. Could you elaborate more about this stop method, but regarding like going to like more expensive options in restaurants, for example? So how would you like reevaluate whether to go for it or not? Does it pertain back to like their spending capacity? Or
Yeah. So there's no right or wrong, right? Because all of us have different spending capacity, and also more, it's not so much even the spending capacity, it's more how we choose to direct our, how we allocate our funds, right? So for example, two people might earn the same amount of money, but one believes in allocating the funds to retirement or to their children's education, and another person might allocate the funds to expensive restaurants or branded bags. So there is no right or wrong in the way that we are allocating our funds, but more importantly, the way that we allocate them needs to be wise mind mode, and also needs to be in accordance to our values, what is important to us. So an example would be, if family is an important value, providing for family is an important value, then you might stop yourself and say, I might reallocate this fund to my children's education, right? Versus like buying branded stuff for myself, right? But when we talk about decisions that we make with spending, it's also important to take note that it's not an all or nothing. Also the thing with all or nothing, like I cannot go to any expensive restaurants or I'll just keep going to them. Anything in extreme ends of the spectrum will not be helpful. And one life philosophy that my father has passed on to me, which I'll share with everyone, is everything in moderation. Everything strike a balance, right? And everything, don't go all or nothing, extreme ends of it. So with going to expensive restaurants, I think maybe you can stop, when you want to go, like when you want to make a reservation, stop first, take a breath and anchor yourself. Observe your state of mind and how you're feeling, and why you are even making this decision to go to this restaurant. Example, if it's a special occasion, if it's something that you really want to try once in a lifetime, and you, because of your values of love for your partner or your values of kindness, and you want to spend this special moment, have a special experience with that someone, and that sits well with you in your values of generosity, then proceed, go ahead and enjoy yourself. But if you then go there and you end up beating yourself up, like, oh, I shouldn't have come, it's so expensive, I wish I knew, I didn't come, then you are paying to suffer as well, right? Because there's a concept versus like pain versus suffering, right? Suffering is really what we add onto the table and then we punish ourselves further. Pain is the actual spending of the money, for the Michelin restaurant that you go to and then you spend, right? So maybe that can help to guide your decision in whether or not you want to go to that restaurant.
I think another one, not sure if I saw this question. Sometimes we tend to associate products of a certain brand which are more expensive, having a higher quality, right? So we end up choosing that over cheaper products. Do you think like there's any mental tips to help us overcome this?
I like this question because I think there's a very interesting proposition where a specific company is selling a particular cleaning cloth for a very high price versus like you can just get a normal cloth from your spectacle shop to clean the same products. But that is just the psychology of things, right? It is branding, right? It's actually associated with the brand. I think it's firstly you need to ask yourself why, like what is the thought process behind why are you buying this brand? Again, there is no right or wrong, right? Like an example of a difficult argument to have is the concept of, I can't remember the term of this, and maybe yourself or the audience would remember this. And anyone listening in, if you know what I'm talking about, please just chime in as well. It's the concept of economy of things, where, like example, you buy a branded bag, right? And it's more expensive, but you end up using it for a very long period of time, versus if you buy a very, very cheap bag that breaks down quite quickly, and then you end up buying a lot and a lot, right? So I think sometimes we need to be honest with ourselves, like, why are we buying this particular brand or product? Is it because you have had very positive experiences where the things are actually pretty durable and you are very satisfied with either the after service of this, purchasing this product, or the fact that it's very durable, or the fact that it actually, helps with your confidence or your image, right? So I'm also thinking about, like, branded things that we might be carrying. Oftentimes, part of it is also to boost our confidence and our self-esteem, right? So why are we buying what we buy? So again, being aware of the reasons can help you make a more measured, non-impulsive decision about whether you are going to go ahead and purchase this product. And I suppose in terms of this question, it depends on what you mean by overcoming it, right? Like overcoming it meaning, like, I don't want to buy any of those, like, more expensive brand, or more like to make a more measured decision before you automatically purchase it.
So it's like recognizing the product is good rather than the branding is good.
Yeah, so making a more wise mind decision in terms of, like, logically kind of really working it out, right? So don't automatically just buy because it's a certain brand, or that is just because it's more expensive, but buy because in your experience or in your research, you know that this is either more durable, or the after service care is professional, is good, and there are logical reasons for why you are purchasing this product. Or if you then assess that actually a cheaper, like a different brand with a cheaper product can actually do the same thing, then with a bit of mindfulness, you might want to make that intentional decision to give that cheaper product a go. And then you can also evaluate that experience. And a lot of times it's accumulating your experiences, right? If you never ever buy something that is a cheaper brand, and then suddenly to ask you buying it, that can also be a bit anxiety provoking and a bit uncomfortable. But if you give yourself an opportunity to explore this cheaper brand, and you actually got a positive experience, that is also then more likely to encourage you to try something in that product range again.
Great answer. So when you were talking about research just now, so I think this another question kind of relates back to it, right? So pertaining towards like investments, should they actually change their habits to actually research more, to become a bit more savvy before like making any form of big investments, right? Because I think nowadays with a lot of social media, you get a lot of news about which stock to buy or like which coin to buy, and people tend to disregard any form of research. They just kind of trust the masses out there. I think that's like a bad habit also.
I don't particularly subscribe to the concept of remember the words that we use, the way that we think about things affect the way that we feel and react, right? So I like to try to stay away from the word bad, because it doesn't really give us sufficient information about the topic or the subject matter. In that sense, I would be more inclined to kind of think about whether this is helpful or not, whether this is a helpful or healthy decision, right? So in terms of like our habits in kind of not really going into research and just taking on what the masses share. One, again, I think the psychology in that, right? It's just the same principles as the, getting you to just buy impulsively. But two, this is really, really, really normal, because just think about even the most recent example of COVID, right? How many of us actually really go and research every single bit of the vaccine, and what it entails, what it means, what it contains, and actually go and compare, versus just hear say my friends say that this was the consequence, these were the side effects, or then my other friends say this, some say Moderna better, some say Pfizer better. Okay, then, depends on how I feel about this friend and how much I trust this friend, I'll just kind of go along with it. So I think it's really just normal human nature in that sense that we kind of fall into that trap. I think that investing is quite a big decision, isn't it? So again, depending on how much you're investing and what kind of investment you are making, and I think perhaps Melvin and Sebastian would have a bit more helpful information than I would have. I'm hoping to learn from you tonight about investments. But maybe you need to start to think more carefully about why you are actually investing in this particular brand or company. And why are you even investing? What are you hoping to get out of it? Is it in line with any of your broader goals and in line with the values that you hold close to yourself?
Thank you so much, Annabelle.
Okay. All right, so I'll just keep going. Okay. So another part of making considered decisions is to take some active control over our decisions, because sometimes we can just get overwhelmed by the wealth of information that is presented to us, right? And in the example of investing, I think there's just so much information. And truth be told, if you ask me to make an investment decision, I will also be lost and confused and overwhelmed because I just don't even know where to start, who to go to, what do I look out for, because there's just a dump of information everywhere. When situations like that happen, we naturally default to heuristics, so these mental shortcuts to ease decision making. So in the example where you think about, all of us have stereotypes about things. It could be about people, about races, unfortunately, about experiences. So our brain actually creates these shortcuts and what we call stereotypes to help us make quick decisions, because it's too much to break down every single decision. So when it becomes overwhelming, then our resources are low, right? Then we'll fall back to these mental shortcuts. But the thing about these mental shortcuts is they can lead to cognitive errors. Just like if you think about, if you have certain stereotypes about certain types of people that you have interacted with, and that means that it's also unlikely for you to give somebody who is similar to this category of person a chance. And that means that you are likely to have a missed opportunity about connecting with someone whom potentially could have had a meaningful relationship with. So the way to help take active control, it's like we talked about earlier, a wise mind decision, the way that you think about things. And also another thing about making deliberate decisions is about kind of just before you make the decision. I think we also talked about this in more the question and answer part of things, would be, what is the impulse? Like, are you doing it for self-image? And I think we have a comment here about how it's to stay relevant in our social circles, right? And the thing about social circles is a social construct. That means that it can actually change with time. I find myself, an example will be, I find myself actually hanging out more with my friends who are also mothers themselves. And they have become my social circle more than, when I was single and I didn't have a husband or I didn't have kids. Then I find myself also hanging out with my friends who have similar lifestyles and similar flexibility in terms of their schedules and how they want to spend their time, right? So social circles is actually a social construct that can change with time. And maybe we can be more mindful about the people that we are hanging out with. Are we aligned in the way that we think about things and our values? So if you find that your friends, they are all very focused on big brands and very focused on kind of the opulent lifestyle, but that doesn't quite sit well with you, then I suppose you need to think about whether it is actually a healthy friend group that you are spending a lot of time with, because they are likely to also trigger the impulsive decision to purchase these things to keep up with that lifestyle, right? So reflect on the reasons, list down the pros and cons. Also, everybody's situation is different, isn't it? You could have someone who have an elderly parent at home, a really sick parent, or 20 children at home that they need to feed, a whole big family, and you will need to kind of think about how wisely you allocate your funds versus like your friends who may have situations that are different from you. They may choose to allocate their funds differently. So we can be more mindfully aware and to list the pros and cons of how we are making our decisions, then weigh the options. Okay. Our brain is a negative machine. That's why we are generally, most of the time, more pessimistic in nature than optimistic. And it's really just a survival thing. It's an evolutionary thing, because if you think about super long time ago, where it's still caveman and iceman, and then there's this big, huge animal running towards man is not going to think, oh, cuddly, this bear wants to give me a cuddle and, look after me. The man is going to think, I think you're going to attack me. So I either need to run or I need to fight you. And if we don't think negatively or in an unhelpful way per se, we will not survive and there'll be no mankind today, right? So our brains are just really naturally producing a lot of unhelpful thoughts every day. So the first thing, and move, kind of following the concept of mindfulness, is start to discern between helpful and unhelpful. Again, that's different from bad and good. What's a good thought and what's a bad thought? I'm also not very sure what that looks like, but I know a healthy thought means that it's more aligned with my values and perhaps the broader sense of my goals in my life, and it helps me become a better person for myself and my family. And an unhelpful thought might probably affect my mood and spiral and cause some suffering, or make result in some decisions that are not the most healthy, or a lot of times when our mood is affected, then we also end up purchasing things more impulsively. And that's also the thing about festive season, right? I can never take time off during the festive season, because that's usually a very difficult time for a lot of us, particularly where there is family time, right? And the result of that is often that a lot of my patients and a lot of the population actually end up coping with such difficulties by binge eating, binge drinking, or binge shopping, right? And all of that are unhelpful coping strategies that are very automatic and very impulsive. So we need to start to discern, like, what is a helpful and unhelpful thought? What are our values? And is this a helpful decision that we make? So an example that I could think about is when it comes to purchasing behavior, right? If I don't own this, my friends will judge me. Or if I don't own this, I don't fit in, or I will lose out. I would consider that to be an unhelpful thought. And for you to start to think more deeply about, okay, is it really true that you will lose out if you don't own this? And also to think about, if your friends judge you because you don't own this, are these actually friends you really want to be hanging out with, because they are more concerned about what you own than who you are? Right? So some guiding questions would be, what's the evidence that supports this, right? Like, how do you think about this decision? What is the best and worst case scenario that can happen? So if I buy, then what's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? What would I tell a friend or confidant about that's going through the same situation? How would I advise someone that I really care about? Even another question could be, is this within my control? Can I do something about it? Yeah. So a lot of times on this journey of like trying to journey towards what I call positive change, I tend to be more cognizant of the fact of it taking a more neutral stance than to be an affirming role, in that sense that an affirming role means, okay, tomorrow will be better, tomorrow I will not spend mindlessly, and tomorrow will be a better day, tomorrow I can invest better, and tomorrow I will not make stupid decisions. But we don't know, right? The reality is we don't really know. And all those positive affirmations, actually the research shows that unfortunately, they don't actually come up to anything. But what has been particularly helpful is more acknowledging the neutral that, okay, I use my value. So tomorrow when I invest, I want to invest with curiosity, right? I want to be more curious about the products that I might invest in. And with that mindset, I can make a positive change, right? By investing curiously instead of impulsively. In this journey, we often find that we have thoughts that we can't achieve what we intend to do. And remember how I was sharing about how habits don't just die out quickly like that, and they take a bit of time. So expect that you would experience a bit of guilt, a bit of shame, a bit of remorse. Okay, so if you survive the last hour of what I've been sharing with you, great. And so now we can kind of focus on taking steps more in line with some values that you can start to identify. I can actually offer a free website for you to also think about. It's called VIA character.org. So VIA character.org is actually a free website. And all you need to do is register an account, answer those questions, and it will actually generate a list of values that are important to you. So the way to interpret your report would be the first five values that come up in the report are already who you are as a person now, and they're your automatic values, okay? And the last five would probably be values that you may want to consider developing and working a little bit more on. So you can have a look at that website. And another way that you can think about it is your 60th birthday. What do you hope that the people around you would say about you? Okay, remember, it's always small, concrete steps. Needs to be small, achievable, steps. If we take an all or nothing approach, black or white approach, we are likely to fail. And when we fail, then we are also likely to stop trying. So an example would be, I'm not sure I will tell myself, okay, I will not buy anything from the 12/12 sale, right? Or maybe more specifically, I think if I tell my husband, don't buy anything from the 12/12 sale, I will expect him to fail on that request. But if I say, kind of set a budget and think about why you're buying what and do you really need it, and start to engage in a bit more of a mindful process, then that's a more small, concrete step in taking to change the way that he's thinking about what kind of things he wants to buy. Okay, and then once you incorporate these smaller steps, then it becomes easier to work up to something that requires a bit more commitment. But remember, please be kind to yourself. Pain and suffering is when you're not kind to yourself and you start beating yourself up. That's not very helpful. So if you can, whenever you make a decision that you are not most comfortable with, just remember to engage in the reflective process, and it's a trodden pathway, so you can try again the next time. All right, I think that's all from me, Melvin.
Thank you so much, Annabelle.
Yeah.
That was really good. So I hope all of you guys found it an exciting session. I definitely did more than I expected it to be. But over to you now, Sebastian.
Thank you, Annabelle. Indeed, a really interesting session, and quite different from what we usually do. But I think really interesting and really adds a new perspective on the whole investment or the investing as a topic. If you stop sharing your screen, then I can bring up my screen. I hope everyone should be able to see. Yeah, so I know like we're already at 8 p.m. because there were so many questions about Dr. Annabelle's session. So we'll try to keep this relatively short today. Really just an introduction to what we do at Syfe. There are weekly webinars every week, which covers different aspects of what we offer. So for today, really just an introduction for some of you who might want to turn some of these points into action and get started with investing. Let us cover some of the basics first. I think someone which is really important to check up front, which is that whoever you invest with is properly licensed, properly licensed company. We are licensed by the MBS. We have a retail fund management license, which comes with very stringent requirements in order to protect individuals, and their investments. We are using DBS account as a so-called trust account. So all our client funds are transferred to this DBS account, strictly segregated from Syfe's own funds. And from there, they are invested through our broker Saxo and are then custodized with our sub-custodians, Citibank and HSBC. Again, always all segregated from Syfe's own assets. A quick introduction to our journey. So we got this license in July 2019. This is when we launched our services here in Singapore. We are also like headquartered and based here in Singapore, but we do have clients across 42 countries. And interestingly, the clients range from 18 to 93 years of age. Nearly half of which come through referrals. So it's our existing clients referring their friends and family. I think this is a screenshot from about a month ago, which shows that we are the number 6 most popular personal finance or finance app in the iOS Apple App Store, among all the big banks like DBS, OCBC, etc. We won several awards. The one which we're showing here is the so-called DigFin Award for Best Digital Advisory Solution, but we've also just been awarded as part of the Singapore FinTech Festival with two different awards. We have a 4.6 star review on Seedly, and we have been growing really fast throughout this year. So in the first half of the year, we quadrupled our AUM. And we have also raised additional funds, which bring our total funds raised to $52 million, which is really there in order for us to grow our business further and should show that this is a very stable company. What products do we have? I guess there are different products for different needs. We do not try to offer every single product out there, but we offer a curated list for different needs and requirements. So I start with the one from the far left. The Cash Plus is a low risk investment product, really there to park cash. If you don't need cash, why have it sit in the bank account and have pretty much no interest? You can park it there and you will earn a projected return of 1.5% per annum. As with all other portfolios, there are no lockups, no limits. I know that some other companies have like a limit of only up to the first $10,000 or something similar. Here, it doesn't matter if you invest $1 or $1 million, you will always have the same return. Moving on to Plus. Plus is our highly popular real estate investment-based portfolio. So this invests in 20 plus of the largest and most liquid REITs in Singapore. We developed this in collaboration with SGX, and it tracks the IHS REIT Leaders Index. So this is really a portfolio for people who believe in the real estate sector and who are looking for passive income. So this has a high dividend yield of 5.1% estimation for 2021. In 2020, it was slightly lower at 4.5%, but still very high. And then we come to our, I would say, flagship product, which is our core offering. There you have the choice between 4 different portfolios: the defensive, the balanced, the growth, and the equity 100 option. Each of them are diversified across many different industries, across different geographies. And for all except for the equity 100, they are diversified across equities, bonds, and gold. And depending on what is your risk profile, what is your investment horizon, you would pick one of the 4 options, and this basically should give you the best risk-adjusted return for your individual need. So that's what we think should basically build the core of everyone's investment portfolio. And then our most recent addition is Syfe Select. That's a really customizable portfolio. So this is for people who have their own convictions on what will do really well, and they can build their own portfolios for more than 100 different ETFs, or they can choose from 5 ready-made portfolios, thematic portfolios across different mega trends which we are seeing. Yeah, so you can have any of these portfolios. You can have multiple portfolios for different objectives you are pursuing, and we'll go into a few more things like a regular savings plan later on. What I just already mentioned, we believe in a so-called core satellite investment strategy. So this is something where you should have, you should pick a core portfolio which is right for you. It's aligned to your long-term plans, and hopefully these long-term plans are aligned with your values, as we have heard earlier from Annabelle. And then you can add satellites, around this. This could be either for specific purposes, or for specific, like if you really believe that a certain sector will do really well, then you can basically skew your portfolio towards this. Here on the right side, you see the 5 different custom options, the ready-made portfolios within Syfe Select. So custom basically means where you can do everything yourself, but then you can also see here the 5 ready-made portfolios. So it's ESG and clean energy, disruptive tech, healthcare innovation, global income, and China growth. How does it work? It's relatively simple. You just go to the App Store or Google Play, or also on the web to www.syfe.com, and very quickly you can create an account using my info. So it should only take a few minutes. And after answering a few questions, you'll basically get a portfolio recommendation. You can use the forecasting tool, which will give you, you can basically play around with, how does a lump sum and monthly investments change, the projected outcome over different time horizons. You can change between the different portfolios. You will see exactly what is in the portfolio. You will see what are the fees related to the portfolio, and you can see the historical returns. And all of this before you actually make a decision if you want to invest in this portfolio or not. Once you have decided to invest in the portfolio, you can on a daily basis see how the portfolio is performing. And you can see this here on the left side of the screen. So you all really on a daily basis see exactly how it is moving. What are our fees like? The fees depend on how much you invest, but I think regardless the amount you invest, they are really focused on a low all-inclusive like management fee. So starting at 0.65%. If you invest a minimum of 20,000, it goes down to 0.5%, all the way to 0.35% per annum if you invest $500,000 or more. In addition, with the in the blue tier, so meaning like no minimum investment, you can access our wealth experts a team of wealth experts within the first month, so they can explain to you all the different portfolios. If you are on the higher tiers, you have even like dedicated experts which you can access at any time. Cash Plus, we are not charging any management fee, so this is completely free, but it also does not contribute to the AUM, which is used for the tiering, for the pricing tier. Important, there are no trading fees. So the trading fees are already covered in the management fees. So if you are on one of the traditional brokers, right, they will charge you up to like $20 or $25 for every trade, right? There is no trading fees. If you put in $10,000, all $10,000 will be invested for you without any fees. There are no entry-exit charges. Something which I wanted to already bring up earlier. If you want to do monthly top-ups, right? You want to be, investing a certain amount every month. This is very important that there's no entry or exit charges. There's also no minimum balance, so you can start with any amount, but you can also on a monthly basis top up any amount you want without any minimum. There's unlimited free withdrawals, so you can withdraw at any time because there are no lockups, and you can withdraw also at like any amount. If the portfolio is rebalanced, then this automatically happens for you, and there's no fees either. And last but not least, all the ETFs within your portfolio are assessed for many different criteria, but one is obviously low management fees. So we are picking really ETFs which are very low cost, meaning there is more of the returns for you. I just quickly already mentioned the team of the wealth experts. So that's actually part of it. I think by now there is a couple of people missing. You will all recognize Melvin, who is with us on the webinar today. They will really, the team will really help you to understand our portfolios in more detail. They can also go into a bit more personal, they can also, understand a little bit your personal information, and so on. Yeah, with that said, and I know I was rushing this through a little bit today because of the late hour, but we have a promotion, and because it's December, we even extended it to 6 months fee waiver for investments up to $50,000 by using the Syfe webinar promo code. So feel free to sign up and use the code in order to have the management fees waived for the first 6 months. Great. I guess this is the Syfe session for today. Melvin, do we have any questions, or are our viewers tired and they have asked all the questions to Dr. Annabelle?
I think there's one addressed to Dr. Annabelle, maybe just one off for her, and we'll cap off the session for tonight.
Fantastic.
Right. So this question pertains to ADHD, right? Any tips on building new habits for those with ADHD, right? They might have difficulty committing to new things, especially.
Okay, I think that depends on what type of ADHD, whether it's the attention deficit type or the hyperactivity type or the mixed type. I think different types will require different kinds of strategies. But the thing about ADHD as well is generally, I think that it's important to take it also into context, the unique personality and resources of the person. So the general strategies that I can offer will be more like kind of breaking things down into smaller concepts, taking notes, kind of like putting post-its, and reminding yourself the values of why you are committing to what you want to commit to change, but more specific strategies that can be helpful to you, I think that you need to probably discuss with a psychologist and to take that into more consideration about your circumstances and the specific difficulties that you are experiencing and resources that you might have.
Great. So I think that's all for today. Thank you so much, Dr. Annabelle. Really enjoyable having you here.
Thank you for having me. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Annabelle.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.